Halloween has come and gone, and yet we're still being subjected to the scariest thing of all, Nancy Mace. If this right here alone isn't enough to spook ya, imagine working at an airport as a federal employee after over a month of not being paid, only to have a government official show up late, angry, cursing at you and accusing you of putting her at risk. There is nothing more frightening than a MAGA Karen blaming you for her own incompetence. But Nancy Mace's hubris might come back to bite her in the end, in her bid to become South Carolina's next governor.
I will not allow it. It's not going to happen.
Make sure you're subscribed to Really American if you like the kind of news that MAGA Mace desperately doesn't want you to know about. I think that we should rename being a Karen to being a Nancy, because I just can't imagine someone having the gall to withhold health insurance from millions of people and then shut down the government because you refuse to reverse that decision, and in the process deprive millions more Americans of their SNAP benefits, all the while not paying employees for over a month at this point, and then turn around and blame those same employees for your mistakes.
Thanks for joining us today at noon, everyone. I'm Ann McGill. U.S. Representative and gubernatorial hopeful Nancy Mace addressed reporters today after an incident at Charleston International Airport last week. Now, she claims that the Thursday morning incident that you're getting a look at right here put her safety at risk and calls for immediate changes among airport officials, as she claims that this is the latest in a series of neglectful incidents at the airport.
If I wrote an incident report for every time someone cursed at me to give me feedback, we would run out of paper. I think that this is clearly a political hit job, and we need to spend more time securing the airport than attacking a hardworking conservative member of Congress.
Now, that incident has already drawn harsh criticisms of Mace from Alan Wilson and Pamela Evitt, who were both running against her for governor. A spokesperson for the airport says they do not have a comment on the incident.
Nancy Mace's behavior is pretty indicative of who she is as a person. You can always tell a person's character by the way they treat people who serve them. And Mace is walking around like her shit don't stink. But we've all seen the amount of beans that this woman eats, so we know that that isn't the case. Here's the headline from the usually super conservative New York Post. Nancy Mace allegedly berated cops in profanity-laced tirade at South Carolina airport. No way to treat a fucking U.S. representative, says the woman who only uses her power as a representative to attack trans people. Here's what some of the officers who encountered Mace said. Any other person in the airport acting and talking the way she did, our department would have been dispatched and we would have addressed the behavior. Mace's behavior apparently left an American Airlines gate attendant in disbelief, and a TSA supervisor told the officers that Mace talked to several TSA agents the same way. In a nearly identical account of the incident, a second officer noted that Mace said Tim Scott would not be fucking treated this way. Oh my God, this woman is so entitled. How dare I not get preferential treatment to my own mistakes? These people are so high on their own supply that she thinks that anybody would treat Tim Scott any more special than her. Hate to break it to you, lady, but nobody in the real world, including TSA agents, give a good goddamn about either one of you. Here's the official report. At approximately 6 a.m., officers were requested to escort Representative Nancy Mace from the front curb to her flight. They were informed that she would be arriving in a white BMW at 6:30. Officers arrived at the ticketing curb at about 6:20 and waited for a white BMW to arrive. At 6:35, they were informed that Nancy Mace was about 15 minutes behind schedule. They maintained their positions and continued to look for a white BMW arriving. Shortly before 7, though, they were informed that Representative Mace was already waiting at the TSA RCM entrance, so she was already at the airport. We arrive at the TSA checkpoint in less than a minute and found Nancy Mace waiting at the entrance, very irate. She immediately started walking towards her gate. During the entire escort, Representative Mace was talking loudly, using profanity at times for others to hear. It appeared she was either dictating a message into her phone or talking to someone about the situation. When we arrived at her gate, she boarded the aircraft at about 7:10, and we stood until the aircraft departed at the gate about 7:30. Nothing further. So Nancy not only gave them the wrong car description because she said she was going to arrive in a white BMW, and she actually arrived in a black sedan of some kind. Not only did she show up late, saying she was going to get there at 6:30 but showing up at 7, but she also apparently was dropped off somewhere she wasn't supposed to be. And despite being responsible for all three of these mistakes, she really decided to think, get in there and make things about yourself, Nancy. This slight inconvenience must certainly be a threat on the life of a sitting U.S. representative. This is exactly like when that elevator at the UN mysteriously stopped working the second that Donald Trump put his full weight on it. And instead of thinking, hey, maybe we need to order this man fewer filet-o-fishes, the MAGA mind thinks, nah, this must be part of some plot to have me assassinated.
Before you go, there are reports that you were involved in a heated confrontation with airport police and TSA agents at the Charleston International Airport Thursday. You posted this on X. TSA wouldn't let me through. So what happened?
Well, one of the rumors last week was that I was blocked by TSA, which was not, in fact, true. Yes, I did have an interaction on Thursday. I want to be very clear here. We saw last year 2 assassination attempts on President Trump. Just a few weeks ago, we all witnessed as Charlie Kirk was assassinated right before our eyes in public. We've seen that Steve Scalise years ago was shot, 4 or 5 times. And in the political environment we have today, there's no room for error when it comes to security. I have at this particular airport and no other. This is the only airport where I have any issues, but my children have had issues here, my employees, but we have had over 24 security breaches at this particular airport just 11 months into this year today. I've been in 4 airports in the last 5 days without incident. So yes, I did confront those who did not show up to do the job. My safety was put at risk. I have had incidences at airports. I had an incident in Chicago earlier this year where a man followed me through the airport, and the Chicago airport security was very swift to ensure that I was safe and get that individual out of there. I had other incidences where someone tried to physically have an altercation with me at one of the DC airports. I'm grateful to the Capitol Police for stepping in, but this is a serious issue, and mediocrity when it comes to airport security and security breaches will not be tolerated when I'm governor and not when I'm in Congress for nobody.
But so why wouldn't they let you through? That's the part that I'm not quite understanding here. What was their reason?
They did let me through. I was let through.
Okay,
yeah, I was let through. Right. But there's a federal process under TSA rules that require federal officials to have law enforcement personally escort us through the crew member line. So there's a process. I waited patiently. I asked for assistance from TSA. They were very helpful. And so we did it eventually. But you know what the Charleston Airport did was also release details about the vehicle that I was dropped off at, putting my safety at risk on Thursday. They released details on where I get dropped off at the airport by releasing video. It's all scary for an individual. I have more than 1,300 death threats a year. And so I take my security very, very seriously. I don't want to be the next person that gets shot and killed.
And and to be clear, other elected officials have used that crew member line and
all
so
the time.
So this is why. So maybe you're feeling you were maybe targeted by these agents and it was unfair.
Oh, I absolutely have been targeted at this airport. But thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
Of course, Mace is becoming more and more Trumpian as time goes on. Her quest for power has come a long way, and she's not going to be stopping anytime soon, unfortunately for all of us. So far, her campaign for the next governor of South Carolina seems to be exactly like all the other Republicans, desperately begging for Trump's attention. Because without that sweet endorsement from Donald Trump, all of these people are dead in the water. And so she is desperate to be as sycophantic as possible. I mean, they all are, even as he continues to keep his distance from her. Here's reporting from Politico. Though early favorites have started to emerge, the race remains wide open without Trump's nod. He'll get to decide my fate. He is a kingmaker, and I hope in this case he will be a queenmaker, said Mace. Disgusting. The third-term member of Congress, known for being outspoken on conservative cable news and social media. Yeah, that's one way of being absolutely obsessed with trans people and pretty much nothing else. But so far, Trump has stayed out of the race, forcing contenders to try to define themselves and their candidacies without input from someone who has dominated the party for a decade and remade it in his image. In that way, the race mirrors the challenge awaiting the Republican Party, which must grapple with a future without Trump, which is in his final term. Not sure if they mean his final presidential term or his final term in life. Personally, I hope for both. And this is a good point because it's yet to be seen if tying yourself to MAGA is going to be a successful strategy in the long run. It certainly wasn't after Trump's first term. Of course, this is South Carolina we're talking about, which the Democrats haven't won since 1976. But Trump is historically unpopular, and I just don't think that Republicans are fully aware of how bad things are going to get if they keep cutting programs like SNAP and rural utilities assistance. South Carolina is no different than the rest of the nation, currently facing a massive food crisis. 500,000 people in the state have SNAP benefits, and the effects of losing those benefits are something that we will see immediately. Like this woman who was caught on camera not being caught by a security guard after running out with a full cart of groceries. There isn't any confirmation on where this took place, but it's safe to say that the same thing is happening or will happen across the country very soon. MAGA and the far-right Republicans have this strange relationship with social welfare programs like SNAP, where they believe that immigrants and black folks are taking advantage, and therefore it's best if we just get rid of these programs. But they ignore the fact that there are still millions of white, native-born Americans who will suffer too. Millions of poor, uneducated white Americans who tend to be ding, 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 MAGA and far right. I mean, it's a snake eating its own tail, except instead of a snake, it's Nancy Mace, and instead of a tail, it's a big-ass plate of beans. Okay, I lost the metaphor there, but the insult was worth it. Be sure to subscribe to Really American for all the news that MAGA doesn't want you to know. I'm Tony Hinderman, and I'll catch you next time.